everyone, to the Ditch the Struggle podcast. I'm your host, Alana Russo. I'm a graphic designer and career and success coach who knew I could do better, but kept falling short of where I wanted to go. And now, after years of exploring personal and career development, business, money mindset, and energy work, I'm here to tell you that yes, you can move from stuck and defeated to empowered and confident. Ready to dive in? Awesome. Together, let's ditch the struggle. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ditch the Struggle. It's Alana. And today is another job interview story. And this one's pretty recent. It is from July 2022. So not that long ago. And I had promised you that I would do a recent story, one that was more current or au courant, as I like to say, because the last few were definitely from, I think, about 10 or 12 years ago, some of them. And this story is an important one to share and an interesting one to share, because I'm going to talk about red flags. I'm going to talk about following your gut. I'm going to talk about when an interview goes really badly and what to do and how to recover from that. So let's just dive in. I actually wasn't looking for a job when this potential opportunity came around. I got a message from a recruiter. We're going to call her Erin for this story, in my LinkedIn. And the subject line was, "We're looking for a remote leadership development manager!" Exclamation mark. Hi, Lana. So this was kind of interesting right off the bat because I liked the title, and any kind of internal leadership position, and this was an internal position, are really, really rare to find, especially in Canada. You just don't see companies hiring internal coaches or leadership positions. They'll usually have them as a contractor, an external contractor. In the States, there's tons of internal coaches and tons of internal leadership. For some reason, Canada, we suck at that. And it's really unfortunate. I think if a lot of companies had more internal leadership and internal coaches, there would be so much less turnover. That's just my thoughts. So when this came through, I was kind of interested. So I clicked on the link. She had a link to schedule a time to have like a screening interview, and then the job description, which I don't have access to anymore. But I remember the job description was pretty good. It was like interesting. Now, right off the bat, I freaked out a little bit because it was for a digital marketing agency. And my interest in doing agency work, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say minus 17, somewhere around there, because I much prefer being in-house. I have done agency work. I've done it without agencies, design agencies. The stress levels are insane. You are constantly jumping through hoops for the client. You can't really say no. It's a very different vibe than being in-house. In-house, I feel like it's got much more realistic deadlines. Everyone's more grounded. No one's losing their shit every 2 seconds. Well, maybe not no one, but not everyone is. So that was not of interest to me right away. And then I of course, went onto their website of this company and started really looking around. And I started seeing red flags, like right off the bat. Some of the red flags included that they work like nonstop. I got that impression right away that they will hop on a Slack, chat or a call like day or night. And like that they just keep going. They will do whatever it takes to make sure that your product or service is marketed well. And I could just immediately feel this vibe. It's like I'm reading through the words and I know all the jargon. And just by the fact it was a digital agency, I knew there would be insane deadlines. The digital world changes every 2 seconds. Scope changes all the time. Nothing's finite. Everything seems to mush-a-boom and everything's a fire, a lot of manufactured urgency. So was not excited necessarily about this kind of company, but I was excited and interested in the actual role. So I wanted to see what they had to say. So I booked the screening interview, and Erin was really friendly and it was a good conversation. I felt connected to her. I knew that I had something to offer. I felt in alignment with what she was looking for. They really needed someone to help the creative team perform and get some workflow processes in place and provide some leadership. And it really felt like that was a place and a role where I could contribute. So I was kind of excited about it. And I was asked for the second interview, like right on that call, and that was going to be with the employee development manager. So that was booked. And of course, I look up the employee development manager on LinkedIn and look at her profile. And I was like, wow, we're kind of twinning. We seem similar interests, even down to the vegan nail polish that she was using. Like I was using it as well. And I thought, wow, this is kind of interesting. So go for the second interview. This is when things start to go a little wonky, a little stressful. So I hop on the call. It's a Zoom. And we're going through everything. And I could tell she was, really intense. I got the sense that she was definitely a serious type A. And I will be honest, I don't always connect and work best with the really intense type A's. I am not a type A. I am a high performer and a high achiever, but I don't fall into that category. I do not like that manufactured urgency. I don't like that stress feeling. I don't feel like we have to hammer things out like with that panic button always pressed. And I find a lot of type A's do that. It sets me off. It stresses me out because I always know I'm going to get things done and I don't need that external pressure. So don't always work too well with that kind of personality. But I could tell that she was competent at what she does, at what she, was bringing to the table. I was a little concerned there. I wasn't sure if it was going to be a great personality fit. And then I decided to do something kind of interesting in the interview. I decided to get ahead of something, and that is the fact that I had left my toxic job in 2021 because I had a toxic boss situation. The reason why I brought it up is because I have talked publicly about this. I've talked about it on LinkedIn. I've been on podcast episodes. I don't think you'd have to do too deep a dive to find this information. So I decided to get ahead of it. I was like, I'm going to be fully transparent. And I just said something like, I literally brought it up. I was like, listen, I just want to be transparent and explain to you why I did leave my last role. I did have a toxic job situation, and here's what happened. And I top-lined it. I didn't get into the details. It was deeply uncomfortable to say this. I knew that I was taking a bit of a gamble here, and you never want to talk badly about someone in an interview. So I wasn't saying anything overtly critical. I was really explaining it like this was a situation. I knew that it was not a viable work situation for me. It wasn't ideal. I said something like that. And I said the whole story. Of course, I'm sitting there like holding my breath. And she goes, oh, okay, thank you. And literally moved on to another question, like barely acknowledged it. And I was like, oh my God, like what did that? I don't know what to say about that. Like, did I just really F things up? I couldn't get a read on her. And the fact that I also couldn't get a read on her made me uncomfortable because generally I'm pretty good at reading people. And when I can't read someone, that's usually a sign for me that there's something amiss here, that it might not be a great fit in terms of personality. That's just generally what I observe when I'm working with others. So the interview finishes. It was maybe 45 minutes, and I did not feel good about it. In fact, I felt sick to my stomach. I felt like I screwed things up. I really questioned whether I should have brought up that toxic boss story. I just felt gross. When you just like end something and it just doesn't feel good. And no word of a lie, I went straight downstairs to the couch. I got under a big blanket and I sat there eating chocolates. I think they were chocolate mint, like my favorite. I know that's very polarizing. I love chocolate mint. So I'm on my couch eating bonbons after this interview. That's like goes to show you how I felt. Did not feel good about it. And I thought that was just a hot mess. Clearly this, interview process is over. We're not going anywhere from here. She didn't like me. I'm not sure about her. This is probably not a great fit. And then I started going into like immediate acceptance mode. Well, like it's not meant to be. I'm just going to, take this experience as for what it is and just keep eating my bonbons, I guess. And no word of a lie, I am sitting there on the couch and my phone rings and it's Erin, the recruiter. And literally I have like chocolate in my mouth and I pick up the phone and she goes, hi, Alana. It's Erin. I'm just calling to follow up on your interview. How did you think it went? which is a very loaded question. I hate when they answer this question. And I was like, yeah, I think it went well. Great conversation. It was really nice to meet. We'll call her Sadie, the employee development manager. And in my head, I'm thinking that was a freaking hot mess of an interview. That was like total shit. And she goes, okay, great. So we'd really like to schedule the third interview with you. And we're going to add, we'll call him Dave, who is the head of people operations. And we'll have you do like an assignment, like a presentation. How does that sound? And I was kind of in shock. And then I just said, yeah, let's do it. Great. A really quick conversation. It was like a minute. She's like, okay, I'm going to send you the presentation information, like what you need to do. And I could not believe that I got called for the third interview. I really did not expect that. Now, I can't remember at what point I did a deep dive on Glassdoor, because I obviously did. You got to go to Glassdoor and take everything with a grain of salt for sure. But I do have to share with you some of the reviews, because I don't know if I read these before the third interview or if it was before the second interview. I feel like I did it actually before the second interview. So I might have had my back up a little bit, or I might have been in defense mode. And that's maybe why I brought up the toxic boss situation right out of the gate. But anyway, at some point I read the Glassdoors, and I always know they skew towards a negative, and I tell that to people when I'm working with them. However, there are some truths in it. And if every single one is quite negative, that's kind of like a red flag. So let's see what they said on Glassdoor about this company. I'm going to read 3. I'm going to save the best one for the end. Okay, so the first one that I read was the title, Worst Company I've Ever Worked For. And when asked about the cons, it says, CEO is delusional and very disconnected from how utterly messed up his company is because of the fear culture he creates. Customers don't stay because employees leave after a few months of realizing that they were sold into a company that is absolutely not people first. Executive leadership doesn't know how to tell them no. This creates a horrible trickle-down effect for employees. Okay, that was yikes, but not, nothing I haven't heard before. Second review says terrible company. And the cons. This company will try to sell you on being a people-first culture, but it could not be further from the truth. I witnessed so many leaders in the company have such a truly awful way of speaking to and treating employees. There is a fear culture running rampant, and people are fired left and right. Run, all caps, from this company. That one kind of got my attention. I was like, that doesn't sound so good. But again, I know that, listen, not every company is a great fit for everybody. And I tell that to people. I've even told people that, were interested in working at the cosmetic company I worked at that I had an awful experience with at the end, that was my experience. And you may go in and not have any issues with how things work, and you might love it. It's different for everybody, right? So let's end. This is my third review that I want to share with you. And is the inspiration, I think it's going to be the inspiration for the title of this episode. So here we go. The truth. Welcome to the Woodchipper. The cons. First, read the review below as well. So they're referencing another really vicious review. I'm not going to read that one as well, but they're like, read that one because it's 100% accurate is what they say. And then they go on to say 95% of my team quit within the time I was working there. One VP quit and another was fired for trying to improve the agency. I had 3 different directors. People are rewarded for loyalty, not results. Mental, physical, and/or emotional health is a big reason for leaving. You'll be burned out within 3 to 6 months and then spend another 3 to 6 months trying to keep your head above water while you're trying to find a new job. Want to take a week off? Only if you can get 2 weeks worth of work done ahead of time. The ones who stayed have been moved into sales roles because sales pipelines is all that matters there. This place is especially toxic, has 0 diversity, and the environment is horrific if you're a woman. The only people who thrive here are people who went to college with management and are a part of the boys' club. Read the management replies to other reviews as well. The level of gaslighting you see in all of them is how he views the world. I expect the same reply to mine. Finally, all positive reviews you're reading are written by current employees and likely in response to management talking about the bad reviews on here. He doesn't ask for positive reviews, but it was implied. You don't dare sign up to leadership there. People are afraid to leave reviews like this for a reason. Okay. So that's a little intense. I remember kind of laughing out loud when I read this one. I was like, oh, this is not good. And the concern there is definitely with how they're treating leadership. And it seemed like you're running on all cylinders all the time. And that was where that was kind of how I saw the original red flags, is go, 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 and just don't ever stop. And I've been trying to move away from that, right? So that's not in alignment with what I'm looking for now, and definitely what I wasn't looking for, last summer. Now, I read all those reviews. I knew to take it with a grain of salt. And I committed to the third interview. And I really did waver because I knew I'd have to put a lot of work into the presentation. And I'm reading all these red flags and I'm reading all these awful reviews that are quite funny, actually. But I'm reading these awful reviews. In any case, I decided to go forward with the third one. And this is what they asked of me for that. So they said, please prepare a 15 to 20 minute presentation. We will schedule 45 minutes to encompass questions, feedback, etc. And the presentation prompt given to me was, please map out your strategy on the below points. What would your first 30, 60, 90 days launch look like? What would you include in your program and why? What would your rollout plan include to the greater group? At this point, I was getting nervous. I have done corporate trainings, but I've never worked in-house. And I started to feel like I was out of my depth. I was kind of freaking out. I don't have an HR background, and I was really worried that they would want more of that the leadership training, the coaching training I had done was not enough. Because what do? We always jump to the conclusion we're not enough, right? It's tiring. Well, what I did was reach out to a friend. So Peter, who I will have on this show at some point, I am going to be having interviews, is a coach and a friend of mine who's worked so much in corporate and is a leadership genius. So I reached out to him, and God bless him, he gave me half an hour of his time, and I frantically took notes, and he just really helped me hit on certain things to talk about in the presentation, gave me a bit of a framework, and from there I was off and running. So I put together a presentation, and I put a lot into it. I put 14 hours into it. I kept track of the hours. I did custom graphics. I made an acronym. I love my corporate acronyms for presentations sometimes. And it was a AAA launch, basically, is what I was referring to it as, which stood for Amplify, Activate, Advance. So I broke my presentation into those three categories. Such a simple framework for any kind of presentation. And it was the idea I was going to amplify what was working, activate new programs and new suggestions that I had so that we could advance the team and move them forward into a beneficial, constructive direction. So do the presentation to, again, Sadie and Dave, who was the head of people operations. I think it went well. Presentations are my comfort zone in a way. I enjoy doing them. I always bring humor into them, which I think helps. I don't like them being too serious, and I don't want to work with a company that's super serious anyway. It's not going to be a good fit. So it goes pretty well. And at this point, I'm feeling like it's not a good fit. Not because the people weren't nice that were interviewing me. Again, I did still have concerns that the employee development manager and I might not be a great fit together, but definitely enjoyed chatting with this Dave guy. But the whole feeling and vibe, like I'm a gut person, felt off and not good. And when I heard them talking about their staff and the designers and the team, I could tell they just wanted to get more blood from the stones. They just wanted more and more and more and more. I remember Sadie in the interview at some point said that maybe it's that the designers need to get better with how they prepare and manage their time to get better results or something like that. And I'm thinking, no, chances are they have too much work on their plate. Chances are they are being asked too much, because that is what happens in most digital marketing agencies. That's the truth. And I'm probably going to be working with very tired, burnt out designers and team all the time. And here's the thing, I'm always going to side on the designer. I'm their advocate because I know what it's like. From their perspective, it's going to be very hard for me to side with the company and just push and push and push and push, because I would never do that as a leader. I would never do that as a manager. I never did that. And I just felt like I was going to be making a lot of concessions and maybe having to lead in a way that was not authentic for me and that I wouldn't feel good about. So I'm shutting down at this point. I'm not really as interested. However, there is always the lure of the corporate stability and salary. I promised myself when I started this podcast, I would be as transparent about money and financial numbers as possible so that there is more salary transparency. People just don't talk about it enough. And so this job, I hadn't, negotiated anything at this point, but they had offered 120 Canadian, which is a decent salary in many ways. Again, I've mentioned this before, it is easier for me to work a full-time job than to be an entrepreneur. And there are times in my life when I prefer being full-time. And there are times in my life when I enjoy and prefer being an entrepreneur. I can swing both ways. And I used to kind of beat myself up about that. I thought, oh gosh, if you're an entrepreneur, that's all you need to do. And that's the only path. But now I realize that that's very black and white. And I enjoy both at certain times. So I wasn't really thinking of a full-time job at this time because I had quite a full plate of both coaching clients and I had some freelance design work. But I was interested in this job. The 120,000 felt like a nice, safe, decent salary. And I could maybe coast a bit, but then I knew I wasn't going to be coasting because this job sounded stressful as fuck. It's like, I felt like I was going to be putting out fires all day long. And I was torn though, because I knew that I could go in and make a difference to the team. I'm naturally good at putting out fires. I'm naturally good at managing a team, helping everyone feel comfortable and really helping people lean into what they're good at, building out those skills, redistributing workload. I think I'm really good at that, seeing what's important, what can go down to the priority list. And I had done a lot of creative management. So in many ways, I felt like it was a good fit for this role. And there was that salary dangling in front of me. However, what did I do? I bailed. They asked me for a fourth interview. And I said no. Here is what I wrote the HR woman, Erin. Hi, Erin. Thanks so much for connecting again. At this time, I have decided not to move forward with the final interview. I really appreciated all of your support thus far and for being so helpful. It was an absolute pleasure to meet you and the team at the company. Thank you again. She wrote back and asked me if there was any main reason why I didn't want to move forward. Like, was it something with the team or anything like that? And I wrote back, both the team and the role seem fantastic. At the end of the day, it's simply a gut feeling that it is not the right fit for me right now. And she wrote back, I totally understand. And totally was all caps. So I don't know if she's someone that also makes decisions based on her gut, but she said, I totally understand. Thank you so much for letting me know and good luck with everything. So in the end, I bowed out. I did not keep going with the leadership development manager role. And actually, I don't think they kept that role. I don't think they hired anyone for that role. I looked it up on LinkedIn, couldn't find anything about it. And the employee development manager, Sadie, who interviewed me, she'd only been there a year. She was gone by the end of the year. She left. She's gone to another company. The head of people has stayed. But I don't think they actually made that leadership development role into anything. I don't think it transpired, which I thought was interesting. I think some companies create a role, put the posts out for it, interview for it, and then in the end, they decide not to go forward with it. And I think that's what happened here. In any case, I learned so many lessons. Let's talk about the lessons learned from this experience and how it has allowed me to ditch some more struggle moving forward with any kind of career decision and interview. Definitely, number one, do not take yourself out of the running. Even if an interview goes really badly, you will potentially get called for the second interview. I can't tell you how many times, including this experience, I've had an interview that goes kind of crappy and I'm, sitting on the couch eating chocolate basically after, and I get called for a second interview. And then I talk to people all the time. I coach them through this all the time. They're going through the interview process, they have one that doesn't go well, and they'll call me or tell me that, total disaster, it's game over, and it's not. They get called for the next, the second, the third, whatever interview. So try not to freak out if an interview goes really badly. You never know. You might have said something that they really loved that's going to counterbalance anything that didn't sit well or didn't fly. I took a bit of a risk talking about the toxic boss. I thought that was going to put me out of the running. It didn't. So don't take yourself out of the running, even if an interview goes bad. And number 2, don't ignore the red flags. If you're seeing them clearly from day one, chances are those red flags are very real indications of what is to come. Do not ignore your intuition or those feelings that you have. I saw those red flags on the website, and then I definitely felt that they were validated during some of the interview process and in those conversations. I could feel my intuition going like, this is not good. This is not good. However, number 3 here is keep saying yes until it is a no. So while, yes, you want to look at those red flags and acknowledge them and not ignore them, you really don't know what the job is all about until you keep going through the job interview process. So the way I like to think of it is a yes until it is a no. So in this case, I said yes to the first interview, yes to the second interview, yes to the third interview with the presentation that I spent 14 hours on. It was a no for the fourth interview because at that point, I just didn't feel comfortable. I knew this wasn't going to be a good fit. I knew I was going to go into workaholic mode, and I do not want that because that is struggle. I do not want that. No, thank you. So keep saying yes until it is a no is a really, I think, healthy, productive way to go through any kind of decision-making process. Because at some point, your head, your heart, your gut, or all 3 is going to say yes or no more clearly. And if you're muddled and not sure, then my motto is keep saying yes until it is a no. Then you can be at peace with your decision. I definitely know I was at peace by the time I got to that fourth interview. I felt like I gave it like a really good run. I didn't bail too early. That's not to say that a month or 2 later, I was like, maybe I should have taken that. Like, would it have been so bad? Maybe it would have been good for a while. I would have learned like tons. Like, how often do those jobs come up? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? I do know I made the best decision I could at the time, and that is enough for me now. I accept that. At the time, I felt I needed to turn the job down, and here we are. And on that note, I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite Irish sayings that I always remember when I worry I have kind of sort of fucked up a decision, especially with my career. And it is one I think of all the time. And I will say to myself, I will text this to my friends when they're going through something. It's really simple. And so here we go. What's for you won't pass you. And I absolutely believe that. See you next time, everyone. Thank you for joining me today on Ditch the Struggle. You showing up here means so much to me. To dig deeper into the topics discussed today and to learn about my work, visit alanarosa.com. And don't forget to download your free resources while you're there. And if this episode resonated with you, please share with others who also want to ditch the struggle. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating and a review, and let me know what you'd like to see more of on this podcast. And before I go, I want to leave you with my 3 favorite ways to ditch the struggle. Be your own best advocate, take baby steps for the win, and forget about a linear career path. It's overrated and you are doing just fine. See you next time.